Welcome to Get to the Hook. I am your co-host, Charles Latibeaudiere.
And I'm your co-host, Eric Colley.
And this week we are going to uncover some albums, some classic albums that maybe you never heard of because, well, for one reason or another, they didn't come out. But they were recorded, and there were some great stories behind them. Now, what led us into this topic is the loss of a legend, which... look, you have by now, it's been over a week since Brian Wilson passed, and you've seen all the retrospectives deservedly of what an incredible, rich tapestry of music this man
Changed
created.
pop music.
Absolutely changed it. A legend. And so we don't need to do a whole retrospective on that. You've seen that. But it did get Eric thinking about some other albums. And by the way, I am much like yourself. I'm going to sit back and learn a lot this episode. I know two of the albums that you're referencing here, and then the others, I'm kind of I'm an audience member here. I want to find out what you've uncovered about these classic artists and the albums they didn't release.
The lost albums, and some of these albums did eventually come out in some form or another, but not when they were meant to. There's a deep history of lost albums, and Brian Wilson is one of the most famous for that because of the legendary Smile album by the Beach Boys. It was meant to be the follow-up to Pet Sounds. It was going to be his magnum opus. It's not hyperbole to say that it kind of drove him crazy, and I mean that literally.
Yeah.
He had a mental breakdown trying to finish this album. We're going to get to another artist that attempted suicide trying to work on an album. There's some careers that were ruined. Then there's others that had the greatest success of their career because of an album that didn't happen, because of what it led to.
Ooh.
But there's so many artists. There's legends. There's too many to get into, but some I just got to mention. Neil Young has a whole discography of unreleased albums. Some of them are still coming out to this day. The Who had a couple. There was a collaborative album between Bob Dylan and Johnny Cash that only one song got out. Jimi Hendrix's final album, Black Gold, has still never been released. There's a cassette tape that it was in his drummer's house somewhere, and that's maybe all that exists of this. 50 Cent's debut album got scrapped. A collaborative album between Lil Uzi Vert and Playboi Carti. Maybe a 2016 album by Taylor Swift called Karma. That is based on fan speculation, but there's a lot of things to suggest she was going to release an album in 2016, which would match because she was releasing every 2 years. So 2014 was 1989. 2016 should have been an album. The whole Kim and Kanye Snake thing happened. People think that's why she scrapped it, and it became Reputation.
Got it. But there were actual songs that they believe there were
this is what
other
the Swifties
songs that
think.
she recorded. Right.
And I will take their word for it because this is a whole science for them. They know this, so I'll take their word for
it. Somewhere there's someone in their basement with a board up with all the dots connected and the thread going like this. There was definitely a Karma album.
Yeah, because I guess in her video for The Man, there's a part where she was already fighting about her masters, and they had it graffitied on the wall, her album titles. And so it was like, Reputation, or it was like Red and Speak Now, and Karma was written there. And people were like, oh, that was the album that she lost and that we lost. So who knows? If there is, maybe it'll come out one day. But the granddaddy of lost albums is Smile by the Beach Boys. Like I said, after Pet Sounds, which was this game-changing record, Brian Wilson thought, I've got to up the level and make an even bigger album.
And felt like he had to because they were, at that point, they were in this Cold War, friendly war with the Beatles, and he needed to respond.
And the first taste we got of what was going to be on this album was Good Vibrations. So that tells you the level he was working at here. This album just became a nightmare. It took months and months and months and 80 sessions, over 50 hours of tape. And Brian Wilson was just obsessed with the perfection of this album, of getting everything exactly right. Eventually, it kind of overwhelmed him. The band got to where they were just tired of it. The rest of the Beach Boys were like, what are we even doing with this? The producer on the album walked away. Just Brian, also had substance abuse issues, but had a full mental breakdown and became just obsessed with this record. And it kind of haunted him for a lot of the rest of his life. Eventually, in '67, when the label stepped in, they released an album called Smiley Smile, which was sort of a bastardized, truncated version of it. They made the productions a little poppier, a little less ambitious.
I'm sure that was the label saying, now, here's what we think will actually sell.
Right.
We took your how many hundreds of hours of recordings, and this is what we think can sell. And which then, I'm guessing Brian did not feel great about.
I think he never fully recovered from that. And then finally in 2004, he re-recorded the album the way he wanted and released it as Brian Wilson's Smile. And then in 2011, a box set came out called the Smile Sessions, which did win a Grammy for Best Historical Album. So Smile was such a great unreleased album, it even won a Grammy. This was, decades later. So one of the songs that was meant to be on Smile was a song called Heroes and Villains. And they did do a popped-up shortened version that became a single, hit number 12 for the Beach Boys. But it wasn't the sprawling opus the original was. It was kind of like Brian Wilson's Bohemian Rhapsody. There was different movements to it. It was long. This is when the Smile Sessions box set came out, we heard a little bit of that, and this is what the original version sounded like. Stand and fall, I know there shall be peace in the valley, and it's all in the favor of my life with the heroes and villains. I think I hear some kazoos in there. There's so much going on. And to just put an underscore into the point about Brian Wilson's mental health during this time, Heroes and Villains became what he started calling the auditory hallucinations he was having. Because I guess he was hearing good and bad things. The album kind of broke him. I mean, he clearly had struggled with issues his whole life, but this project just overwhelmed him. It overwhelmed the Beach Boys.
Well,
they never fully recovered.
Like, the rest, everyone else in the band was not seeing it or or certainly not hearing it the way Brian was, for better or worse. He had something going on in his head that they could not they can't wrap their arms around that because they have no idea. And God, you see why I would tear apart the band. And it's especially after that long recording and like they're in there doing the harmonies, doing everything, and he's going, nope, not good enough. And they're going, what more can we do? What are we supposed to do?
But had it happened,
bro, I got the kazoo in it.
I got the kazoo in there. Who knows what that album could have done had they finished it, had it been released.
If it had come out at that point.
In 67.
Right, where there was going to be such anticipation for it anyway, regardless of how good it was. And I'm sure, look, with Brian Wilson, I get that he was the perfectionist, but if they had released it, everyone would have eaten it up.
Of course.
Nobody would be going, oh, Brian Wilson's subpar,
Well, like I said, when it eventually came out, just the sessions of it were released, it still won a Grammy.
Right.
So who knows? It's funny as Brian Wilson, had his off and on relationship with the Beach Boys, did a couple more albums in the 70s with them, and then in 77, he came back with the Beach Boys to make an album called Adult/Child, and it was a big band concept record. They got into recording that one, and the other members were like, we hate this.
Like, no.
So that was another Brian Wilson album that never got released. I don't think that one would have won any Grammys, but...
Just no, Brian. No, we're not doing it.
This next one, like I said earlier, I teased this, the artist that was making this album attempted suicide. It was a dark, dark time for Marvin Gaye. So 1979, this is 2 years after Got to Give It Up has been a number one hit. His 1978 album, Here My Dear, which is the one he had to release to give all of his ex-wife all the royalties to, didn't do well for him commercially. I think he felt like he was struggling and was being forgotten a little bit. And he felt competition from new guys like Michael Jackson and Prince and Rick James, who were sort of taking that R&B, lover man, funk, sex god kind of thing. And he thought, I need to remind people I'm Marvin Gaye. So he was going to make an album called Love Man. And they actually released a single from it. The first single, this is a little bit of it. It was called Ego Trippin' Out.
I know I'm really hot. My diamonds shine a lot. Check out this here 450 SE, baby.
And the song was a top 20 R&B hit, missed the pop chart. It didn't quite do what he wanted it to do. But he got into making this album. The album cover, which if you see this on YouTube, we're showing the album cover. They did release that. Motown spent a fortune on the photo shoot for this and the album, the packaging on it. And so they're like, okay, where's the album, Marvin? He was going to go back out on tour to start drumming up interest in it. As he's on tour, his marriage to his wife, Janice, is falling apart. And she's alleging all this abuse, that he put a knife to her heart one time. He has an out-of-control cocaine habit at this point. It's ruining him. He cancels the tour, gets sued by the promoters, gets sued by the bandmates. Motown's pressuring him. He hits rock bottom and snorts an ounce of cocaine in an attempt to kill himself.
Wow.
And fortunately for us, that did not happen. I mean, sadly, Marvin was killed by his father in '84, but he kind of recovered, moved on to make another album.
Is this after his time in was it the Netherlands or Belgium? It was Netherlands or Belgium where he went and just lived in this very small...
I can't remember if it was right before or right after, but it's kind of all around that same period of his life.
Again, when we talked about this, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, about when we were talking about biopics, and how the Marvin Gaye one has not been made. and you hope it actually will get me. I know they say that they're closer than ever, but what an incredible highs and lows.
Even just within this period here. So
Right.
this is such a low point. Then the album that he eventually did make in 1981 was not the album he wanted. Motown tweaked it, kind of like what happened with Smiley Smile and the Beach Boys. But then Marvin left Motown and released the Midnight Love album in 82 that had Sexual Healing, was a huge hit, was the beginning of the comeback he wanted.
Mhm.
And then sadly in 84, his father shot and killed him. Like there's so much tragedy and triumph in that story.
You could actually pick probably 5 different eras for Marvin Gaye if you wanted to make a movie just about one era, and you would have the highs and the lows. You would have a full story arc if you just picked one era.
Right. There's
Never mind.
Yeah, there's so
all
much.
of them.
Yeah, again, the triumph and tragedy is like a cycle.
Yeah.
It just happened over and over with him. Ultimately ended in tragedy, but man, the triumphs were pretty high. The Love Man album has never come out.
So we just got that one song.
We got that song.
That
There was a
one.
couple other songs that were changed and put on other records, but he maybe wanted to go back and revisit it, but it just never happened.
Yeah.
One of the artists that I said that he was kind of feeling a little competition with at the time was a young new cat on the scene named Prince.
Yeah.
Prince has a lot of legendary unreleased albums. There was a Camille album, which was a character, a persona he had where he would pitch his
Sign of
voice
the
up.
Times, yeah.
And a lot of those songs went up on Sign of the Times. He had an album called Dream Factory that became Crystal Ball, which became Sign of the Times. In the midst of all this, in the mid-'80s, there's a very infamous album that did get a very brief release window called The Black Album. It was actually untitled. It was just an all-black sleeve with a barcode printed on it, just the catalog number in pink. There was a track list on the CD or on the cassette at the time. But no picture of Prince, no artist
Nothing.
credits.
Yep.
He wanted this released at the end of 1987 as a chance to kind of reclaim his black audience. Because after the Sign of the Times album, he got criticism that he had sort of sold out to pop fans and was getting a little too far afield from his roots. So that's partly why I think it was going to be the Black Album, because it was Prince saying, "Oh, I'm not black enough." And this album was going to be that. And it's a funky album. This is a little bit of the first track on the album. It's called Le Grind.
We're gonna do the grind, y'all. Got you where I want you. Girl, it's gonna feel so good.
So the album's going to come out. Warner Brothers is like, okay, this will be your second album this year. And the first one was a double album.
Right.
Prince was very prolific. And then a week before it was supposed to come out, it had already been manufactured. It was sitting on the loading dock at a warehouse in Germany, 500,000 copies, ready to be sent out. Prince had a spiritual epiphany, decided the album was evil, and thought, well, if I die today, I don't want this to be the last thing I leave on this earth. He called Mo Austin at Warner Brothers and begged him to destroy it. And Mo Austin agreed to it.
Mm-hmm.
Except a couple copies might have slipped out.
Uh-huh.
It became one of, if not the most bootlegged albums in history. I remember I had a copy of it on cassette.
Did you?
In the early 90s.
I didn't know anyone who had it, and I couldn't get to one, and it wasn't until the
official
little
release
window came out. Yeah.
Oh, I had a
that I
cousin
actually heard
who found it in a record store and dubbed a cassette copy and mailed it to me. And I felt like Indiana Jones opening the Ark of the Covenant. I was like, it's the Black Album. Prince, after he scrapped it, again, this spiritual epiphany, he wanted to make an uplifting album about his newfound beliefs.
Right.
Quickly recorded an album called Love Sexy. The Alphabet Street was the lead single, and I felt like a Swiftie here because I was like into all the little breadcrumbs. In the Alphabet Street video, there's a real quick shot where Prince jumps across the screen, but he like fades out halfway across.
Right.
If you pause the VHS tape like I used to do back then, very, very quickly in little small letters up the side, it
You
says,
have to have the right speed, though.
I was like,
of
play,
tape.
pause, play,
Right.
pause, play, pause,
Right.
play, pause. It flashes up for like a couple frames. It says, "Don't buy the Black Album, I'm sorry." And I was like, I have to have the Black Album. I have to have it now. Eventually, it did get, like as you said earlier, it got a brief release window at the end of 1994. Prince had changed his name to the Unpronounceable Symbol at that point, was battling Warner Brothers, wanted out of his contract, and this was the filler. They're like, let us go ahead and release it. So it came out in November of 94, but by January of 95, it was withdrawn from any shops that hadn't sold it out. It was never repressed. It has still never been re-released. And if you go to Spotify or Apple Music, this album is not streaming anywhere. Still to this day. I don't know why. The estate owns it.
The estate owns it, and
Maybe it's out of respect for his wishes.
maybe because that was what he wanted. This was really the start of the beginning of the end for the Warner Brothers. This is that whole battle over. I mean, like you said, that they did scrap it, but they were like, well,
they weren't happy about it.
Yeah. They weren't happy
They
about
had
it.
pressed up 500,000 copies. And then the week before,
But boy, that shows you how much respect they had for and how much they realized what this artist could do, that they're like, all right, we'll scrap all of those because, and you know, there's no record label that's like, oh, we care about you, so we're going to scrap it. They're scrapping it because they believe that whatever else you're going to do is going to make them way more money.
right. And Love Sexy wasn't a huge hit album. But
No, it
Alphabet Street
wasn't.
was a top 10 song. I don't think anything from the Black Album would have been a hit. There's a
wasn't
song
about
about
that.
there's a song about Cindy Crawford, who was a young, unknown model at that point. There's a song where he plays a guy who kills his girlfriend and because she's cheating on him with the guy who manages Prince. It's a weird, dark record. I don't know if it's evil exactly, but Prince had his issues with it.
I never understood, by the way, that his thing about. Actually, I do, because there were a couple of hits off of Sign of the Times that were certainly more poppy sounding, but those were the outliers on the Sign of the Times album.
Right.
And if anyone had actually listened to the whole album, to say that it wasn't black enough is ridiculous.
It was.
Yeah,
Um,
it was black.
It was. Dr. Dre. We got to talk about
Yeah,
the legendary
uh-huh.
Detox. And again, like the Marvin Gaye album, it not only produced a single, it produced two singles, one of which was a top 5 double platinum hit. If you remember this song from 2011, hit number 4, this is Dr. Dre featuring Eminem and Skylar Grey, I Need a Doctor. So all throughout the late 2000s, people were like, Dre, where's that new album?
Detox, it's coming.
Because-
Detox, it's coming.
Chronic 2001 came out in 1999. It's like, okay, it's been 10 years. He's been very busy, obviously, producing
Sure.
a lot of hits for a lot of artists. He kept saying, Detox is the album. It's my last album. It's coming. 2009 doesn't come. 2010 doesn't come. But the first single, Kush, is released and is a top 40 hit. Early 2011, it's coming. I Need a Doctor comes out. And so I remember thinking like, oh, it's really going to happen this time.
Right.
Then it doesn't. And then it gets to late 2011. I'm like, where is this?
Yeah.
And then in 2015, Dre released Compton, a companion album to the Straight Outta Compton NWA biopic, and announces Detox is never coming out. I said at the time, and this is like Brian Wilson too, for these perfectionists who are driven by this and labor over and tinker with these songs. Dre said that he recorded 20 to 40 songs for it, and that none of them really met his standards. So
You know what the problem becomes? You're crushed by your own success, right? Because when your album becomes an instant classic, right? That people, and at that point actually it had been over 10 years.
Right.
So there's time, and when the Chronic is recognized as what it is, and same thing for Brian Wilson and Pet Sounds, but people are already talking about it like with this incredible reverence. Yeah, I guess I kind of get where you would feel like it's just not good enough. It's just not good enough.
And the longer you take to make it, the higher the expectations become. When the public knows about it, this isn't an artist who's working on an album nobody knows about.
Right.
We all knew about Detox. People knew about Smile. There was the Brian Wilson is a genius marketing campaign.
Yeah.
And then that pressure from the public just starts to overwhelm you.
And no matter who you play it for, you can't believe their judgment because, one, they can't hear the music the way you hear it, which is probably true. And also, you think that they have ulterior motives. They just want your record to come out.
Yeah,
So they're
the
telling
fans
you,
just
no,
want
it's
it-
good.
yeah.
No, it's good. It's really good. It's great.
The label just
Great.
wants their investment to pay off.
Right. Oh, we love it, Dre. Come
Yeah,
on.
Just put it out. And again, I Need a Doctor was a hit.
Yeah.
So they're like, it's
Right,
been,
so there's-
it's been received well from the public.
And I'm sure they said that to him. That was part of their sales pitch. It was like, come on, man. It's doing well.
And then he got
But-
distracted with beats and became a billionaire and
Yeah, the whole
didn't
billionaire
care
thing
as much
gets in
about
the way, and
Detox.
he's like, I got some other stuff.
didn't
on
have to care as much anymore. So these are all examples where either just the albums didn't happen and something bad came out of it. But here's some where something really good came out of it. Bruce Springsteen, when he was making his album Nebraska in 81, 82, which is a very dark, somber record, he recorded some home demos of the songs with the intention of recording it with the E Street Band. So he gets his demos, meets with the band in 82. They record the full band version of these songs, and he realizes it doesn't work. Drummer Max Weinberg said that these versions were killer, they were great, but Springsteen thought they don't match the folksy, dark tone of the record. So ultimately, he scrapped all of the band versions and just released those demos, which became the Nebraska album,
Right.
which is a very beloved record. But while he was recording the full band versions, he was working on some more songs. Springsteen's always been a pretty prolific artist, especially at this time. Some of the other songs he recorded in the Nebraska sessions were Cover Me, I'm on Fire, Pink Cadillac, I'm Going Down, Born in the USA. And his producers and stuff were like, that's pretty good.
Literally all of his biggest top 40 hits anyway.
Yeah. I think 5 or 6 of the top 10 singles from Born in the USA were recorded in that session. Just the last one was Dancing in the Dark, and that's just because they said, we need a single to lead.
Yeah.
But the rest of the album was basically done.
Yeah. And they released all, and so that was, God, I didn't realize. So Born in the USA was the easiest album to put together.
It was
Right?
basically already finished.
Just give us one more and then we're good.
So yeah, isn't that great? You have like this aborted
Wow.
session with your band. You're like, this doesn't really work for what I'm doing with this album.
Your castaway, your cast-off material
Became
becomes your biggest album just as far as numbers and what it sold.
Yeah.
That's, and he was, that was on the heap somewhere.
Yeah, it could have just wound up. He's been releasing these. They're called tracks. These different albums, like Tracks 2, that is basically these unreleased albums, and all these songs he's had just sitting around for decades.
Wow.
And just, scored one of the biggest albums of all time. Speaking of biggest albums of all time, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon.
It's still in the top 200, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, it comes and goes. It still pops in every once in a while, absolutely. It's the longest charting album in history. So in 1973, that was a breakthrough. That was a transcendent moment. That was like Pet Sounds or these other albums.
Yeah.
So Pink Floyd, because at their heart, they were weird, prog rock, progressive, experimental weirdos. They started to make the follow-up to Dark Side of the Moon in 1974, and the album was going to be called Household Objects. And it was a concept album. Have you ever heard of this? Do you know this?
No. This is the one, by the way, this is one of the ones I saw. I was like, I really got to hear this because I love Pink Floyd.
Interesting. And it sounds like the height of insane 70s pretension and like Spinal Tapness, just over-the-top ridiculousness. They had the idea to make a whole album with no musical instruments. And that is why the project
Hence
was
the
called
title.
Household Objects. They used pencils, rubber bands that they would record and tune down to make a bass sound, wine glasses, where you just circle the rim to make some tones, saws, pencil grinders, light bulbs, random objects. And so you think, what?
They recorded a whole album then.
No, they got two. They spent a month. They spent a month and wound up with two songs.
With 2
That weren't
songs?
totally finished.
Yeah, I'm sure at that point someone's like,
so at
what
a point, David Gilmour says to Rogers Waters in this very understated British way, he goes, ultimately, to me personally, it became rather unsatisfying. And they thought, this is very hard. And also bear in mind, this is 1974, so it's not like you could record a cool sound and then just put it in a computer and do whatever. Like recently,
you were getting what you're...
Charlie Puth did a song called Light Switch, where it's him flicking a light switch. Well, then he looped that and put
you
other
can
stuff
do all
on it.
sorts of things with it.
You couldn't do that in 1974.
Right.
So they were trying to record this whole album, trying to tune a rubber band to get a bass sound for days. 2 of the songs were made. One was called Wine Glasses, because that's what it was. That wound up getting folded into the album they decided to make instead, called Wish You Were Here. And the song Shine On You Crazy Diamond with that long intro, that is Wine Glasses. They folded it into that to be part of that giant thing. The other track they did was called The Hard Way. It was not released at the time. It did eventually come out in 2011 on Dark Side of the Moon, the Immersion box set. This is what it sounded like. I mean, it's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool.
I don't know if I needed a whole album of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I couldn't do a whole album. It's so funny. Like, it's a great idea if they just said, all right, we have a good foundation for some songs. Now let's add some actual instrumentation on top of it and just mix it all together. It would have been great.
That was the idea. Because we're trying so hard to make a rubber band sound like a bass guitar. What if we just used a bass guitar? I think that was the actual conversation they had. And they were like, you know what? Yeah, let's just make an album. We tried.
I love Gilmore's so understated response. What he's really saying is, what the bleep are we doing here?
Exactly.
Huh? What are we even bleeping doing?
It was rather unsatisfying. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but interesting. It's one of those things that it sounds so rock star pretentious, but I respect that they were earnest about it.
I respect the effort.
They were trying something.
I also respect the fact that they got 2 songs in after a month and were like, no.
I mean, how long would a whole album have taken? Who knows? Green Day. They had an album, a lost album in a very literal sense. So 2003,
Uh-oh.
2003, Green Day records an album called Cigarettes and Valentines, and it was going to be the follow-up to their 2000 album Warning, and it was a return to their early, fast, loud punk pop roots. And they cranked this album out. They submit it to the record label. There's a little fan conspiracy here.
Oh, okay.
They give the album to the label, and then the master tape gets stolen, or just somehow is gone. And they said they had some backup copies made, but they weren't as good as the originals. So they decided...
Okay, this is all kinds of things not adding up in this story. All kinds of alarms to go like, bullshit.
Yeah, so they could have re-recorded the entire album from scratch. They could have used one of the backup tapes. They didn't, because right after they submitted this album to their label, they had 2 or 3 more songs they had recorded just after it. And they really liked those songs. So when Cigarettes and Valentines goes missing, instead of remaking it or trying to somehow get it released, they decide, what if we just pursue these new songs? That turned into American Idiot.
Okay.
So
that kind of worked out.
Yeah, it worked out all right. It was a complete career renaissance for Green Day. Won them lots of Grammys.
So what's the fan theory that who
they
didn't like it?
That they had started, that they kept working after they turned the album in, had these songs that were leaning towards this massive conceptual rock opera thing that became American Idiot, and thought, that's a better album.
So how do we stop them from releasing this one?
Yeah. Oops, it got stolen.
Now, is the fan theory that the label was in on it, or that they hired someone?
I don't know.
Some guys in black masks to go in and steal it from the like.
It sort of falls apart there. I mean, they could have just released it and then still released American Idiot anyway. Most of the songs.
I mean, I got to be honest though.
Yeah.
If you didn't like the album and the label was down with it, creating that story creates more folklore and also builds anticipation for what you know you're going to put out.
Right. But they could have released it by this point. Some of the songs
could have released it by now.
They came out as B-sides. The title song, they did eventually. They performed it live in 2010 and released it on a live album in 2011. So this is a live version of what it would have sounded like. This is Cigarettes and Valentines. I like it, but I don't think it would have done for them what American Idiot did for them.
Right.
I think it would have just been another Green Day record.
Right.
So maybe one day it'll come out. It's been over 20 years.
The story just fell apart for me when they're like, well, we had backup tapes before we decided. No, come on.
But it might have actually been stolen. They could have
been.
They could have just pulled a Prince and called the label and said, hey, we got something better.
Also, if it was stolen, by now somebody would have tried to profit on that. No, right?
Absolutely.
Especially now you could sell it without being traced back to you.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows whatever happened to that record? Got one more I want to talk about really quickly, and I have a specific reason I want to get into this one, because this album has never been released. It probably never will at this point, but it led to something really incredible, one of the greatest songs of all time. Jeff Beck, legendary British guitar player, played with Rod Stewart, played with so many people. He was one of the few white artists, probably the only British white rock artist, to record at Motown. In 1970, Jeff Beck, loved R&B, goes to Hitsville, USA to make an album on Motown.
His own, just a full album.
A full album, 10 songs.
Okay.
And he's recording with Motown's session band, like the Wrecking Crew are there. There's a couple things that happened that ruined this. One, Jeff Beck brought his own drummer, Cozy Powell, in, which did not sit well with the Motown session drummers. They're like, we're right here. You don't bring somebody else in our house.
Who we are?
They don't sit at our kit. And he said that, it was hard for him to bring Motown's early 70s R&B vibes in. It was hard for them to adapt to his classic British rock style. It just didn't happen. He said the master tapes eventually fell apart and got destroyed. He had a cassette dub. He had the only copy. Forgot where he put it. And now Jeff Beck has passed. So I don't know that we'll ever get to hear that. But the cool thing that came from this was his association with Motown introduced him to Stevie Wonder. In 1972, Stevie wanted Jeff to come and perform on his Talking Book album. And he did play guitar on one of the tracks.
Right.
The exchange was, Jeff said, I will come play on your album if you write me a song. And Stevie said, absolutely, done and done. So while they're working together in the studio, they're just jamming around. I mean, these are two, A-level musicians. It's incredible. Jeff Beck starts playing a drum beat, not even the guitar. And Stevie just jumps in on the clavinet and on the spot writes Superstition. And gives it to Jeff Beck because that was the deal.
And yet...
So Jeff Beck goes to record it. He does record it and he does release it in the spring of 73. But his album got delayed a bit. and Stevie's album was coming out. And Berry Gordy told Stevie, "You're stupid if you don't put this out. This song is great. This is going to be a hit." So Stevie did agree to give Jeff a song. He did give him a song, but never said he wouldn't release his own version first. So Stevie Wonder puts out Superstition. Obviously, it becomes what it becomes. To see what it could have been like had they actually collaborated on it together instead of Jeff doing a version, Stevie doing a version. In
Jeff
2009,
played this live with him.
in
Was it a
2009,
Grammy
it was the
thing?
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 25th anniversary concert, and Stevie brought Jeff out and he did a solo, and this is a little bit of what it sounded like.
Jeff, do your thing, son.
Superstition with a Syrian guitar solo is pretty great. If they had both done it, because Jeff Beck's
they just
version
done-
doesn't start with the drums. That's the most iconic part.
Oh,
He's the
his
one who
version
played-
doesn't start with
and
the
he's the one
drums,
who
but
came
he
up
was
with it.
playing the drum beat.
I mean, Stevie eventually played it on the record,
Right.
but Jeff came up with that drum pattern that inspired Stevie to do the ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Yeah.
And yet there are some people who think that Stevie Wonder is second tier musical talent.
Those people are wrong.
Yeah, those
so
people
yeah,
are
we never got
very
Jeff
wrong.
Beck's Motown album, but we did get Superstition out of it. So I think that's a fair trade.
Yeah, that worked out well. I
Yeah,
think
so
that's
who knows what gems are hidden and
There
might
are-
eventually come out.
there are albums being recorded right now that we will probably never hear.
There are probably Taylor
We'll
Swift
just
albums we
hear
don't
of
even
them.
know about.
Oh, there's at least 5 or 6 of those.
Probably, actually.
Yeah. And they'll all come out eventually. and they'll come out with like 5 different versions.
Yeah,
of
and they'll sell 1 million copies.
That is going to do it for us this week on Get to the Hook. And remember, your musical legends, treasure them while you have them, and don't ever question their talent. You know who I'm talking to. We'll see you next week.